Tonight the topic is Satipatthana. Not just Satipatthana Sutta, but Satipatthana, the subject. And this subject is not a subject that all Buddhists want to know much about. It's quite a serious topic, more for people who are interested in meditation. And otherwise, if a person is not that interested in meditation, it will appear pretty dull. But Brother Ing Chai asked me to talk about this subject. So I will begin with the Samyutta Nikaya. A lot of people have been told that the most important sutta of all the suttas is the Satipatthana Sutta. And also that you can know everything about Satipatthana from that sutta, but it's not true. The good thing about the Satipatthana Sutta is that it tells you the subjects or the objects of Satipatthana practice. But exactly how to practice, the meaning of Satipatthana, etc., is not so well explained in that sutta. It is much better explained in the Samyutta Nikaya, in the Satipatthana Samyutta, which is the 47th Samyutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. And there are several suttas that throw light on the meaning and practice of Satipatthana, much more than the Satipatthana Sutta. A lot of people make this mistake of only concentrating on the Satipatthana Sutta, and they get a biased view on Satipatthana. It's like the simile of the blind man trying to find out what the elephant looks like. So one blind man grabs hold of the leg of the elephant, and then he says the elephant is exactly like a coconut trunk. Another one catches the body and he says it's just like a wall. And so all these are biased views. It's one-sided views, narrow views. So you have to get an overall picture by studying a lot of suttas. And many of these suttas concerning Satipatthana are in the Satipatthana Samyutta. And not only there, and in the Satipatthana Sutta, even other Nikayas, Tika Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, they also talk about Satipatthana from different perspectives. So it is good to know many suttas so that you can see a rounded view, rounded picture. So now I'll start off with the Satipatthana Samyutta. The first sutta in the Satipatthana Samyutta is called Ambapali. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali in Ambapali's grove. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, Monks, Venerable Sir or Bhadante, the monks replied. The Blessed One said this. Before I go into that, I'll just go into this footnote. In the Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of this Samyutta Nikaya, he has this footnote. What follows here is the Udesa, condensed statement of the Satipatthana Sutta, without the Nidesa, elaboration. So actually this part that you're going to hear is actually part of the Satipatthana Sutta, just the first part, without the elaboration of the objects. Sorry, before I go into this sutta, first I must tell you what is Sati and Satipatthana. The definition of Sati is given in about 9 suttas throughout the Nikayas. For example, Anguttara Nikaya 5.14 and Majjhima Nikaya 53. The meaning of Sati is given as he remembers and calls to mind what was said and done a long time ago. So from here you see that sati has a lot to do with remembering. Remembers and calls to mind what was said and done a long time ago. The quality of remembering. Now why is it we need to remember? Later you will find that the Buddha says when you practice sati or satipatthana, you have to remember to put your mind on 4 objects, namely the body, feelings, mind and Dhamma. And the Buddha said not to put your mind to the 5, out through the 5 senses, like seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touch. And the Buddha calls that the Mara's domain. You can get caught by Mara when you start to enjoy sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touch. That's why the Buddha said that we should always remember to call to mind the 4 objects of sati. So that is why sati has to do with remembering. Always to remember, to put your attention more on these 4 objects of sati whenever you can, because you cannot all the time put your attention on these 4 objects. Why? Because sometimes when you are walking on the road, if you are not looking around, you might fall into a drain, knock into a lamppost. So you also need to put some attention out to the 5 senses. But the Buddha said not to grasp at these 5 sense objects, because otherwise you can get caught by Mara or Satan. So now, Satipatthana is something else. Sati, actually, right sati is the 7th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right? So Satipatthana is slightly different. And to understand what is Satipatthana, here the footnote by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, he says, the commentaries offer 2 derivations of Satipatthana, one from Sati and Upatthana, meaning the establishment of mindfulness. The other is from Sati and Patthana, the foundation of mindfulness. The former, establishment of mindfulness, emphasizes the act of setting up mindfulness. The latter, the foundation of mindfulness, the objects to which mindfulness is applied. The commentaries lean towards the derivation from Sati plus Patthana, but the former is certainly more original and is supported by the Sanskrit word. So here, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi is saying Satipatthana means the establishment of mindfulness, where some people translate it as the foundation of mindfulness. But these 2 also, you don't understand very much about Satipatthana. You know that sati has to do with remembering. Actually, the word sati, a good translation would be recollection. Most monks use mindfulness. If you use mindfulness, it is also okay as long as you remember. It is mindfulness directed to specific objects, not general mindfulness. General mindfulness means whatever comes to you, you see, whatever sound comes, you hear. That is not sati. Sati is specific mindfulness directed to the 4 objects of sati. That is why the quality of remembering is important. You have to remember to put your attention on these 4 objects of sati whenever you can. Not all the time, as often as you can. So sometimes when I read the suttas, I will use the word mindfulness, but you have to remember that this mindfulness refers to specific mindfulness, which has to do with remembering, not general mindfulness. So Satipatthana here they say is the establishment of mindfulness. But although I'm not a Pali scholar, I would suggest that Satipatthana is the intense states of mindfulness. Because this word patthana, actually Pali scholars also don't know actually what it means. So, like for example in the Abhidhamma, the Patthana book, They also don't know how to actually translate it. So, this word Satipatthana, if you look at my booklet, Mindfulness, Recollection and Concentration, I say that the word Patthana could possibly come from Pa and Thana. And so that combination, if you look in the book, I say it's intense states of mindfulness. And why I come to this conclusion is because if we read certain suttas, we find it is not ordinary recollection or mindfulness, but intense. For example, in the Anguttara Nikaya 7.16, the Buddha said, consider some person who abides seeing impermanence in all conditioned things, conscious of it, aware of it, at all times, continually, without a break, marking it mentally, fathoming it by wisdom, and destroying the asavas. He enters and abides in the asava-free liberation of mind. So you see, the words to note now is, he abides seeing impermanence in all conditioned things, at all times, continually, without a break, all the time. So this is an intense state of recollection or mindfulness. Another sutta is Samyutta Nikaya 47.20. This sutta I will read later. It is the simile of the most beautiful girl of the land, how a person is forced to carry a bowl of oil, and the soldier is walking behind with an updrawn sword, saying that you better be careful. If you spill one drop of the oil, I'm going to chop off your head. So he has to walk looking at the oil all the time without looking anywhere else. He has to pay intense mindfulness on the bowl of oil. That's why I think that Satipatthana means an intense state of recollection. Now coming back to this sutta, the Buddha said, monks, this is the one-way path for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the passing away of pain and displeasure or grief, for the achievement of the method, for the realization of Nibbana, that is, the four intense states of mindfulness. Okay, so here Buddha said that it's a one-way path. Formerly, they used to translate as the only way or the only path. But then you remember just now I said Sati is the seventh factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. How can you practice one factor and achieve Nibbana? So it is not the only way, because it has to be combined with other things like the other seven factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. You practice all 8 factors, then you can attain Nibbana. If you say there is a one way for the attainment of Nibbana, it is true. There is one way, and that way the Buddha calls the Noble Eightfold Path, containing 8 factors, not one factor. So the only one way to Nibbana is the Noble Eightfold Path, and Satipatthana is the one-way path. Even Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, now he comes to that conclusion. There is the one-way path. In fact, he wrote a note here. He says, Ekayano Ayang Mago is often translated, this is the only way, or this is the sole way, implying that the Buddha's way of mindfulness is an exclusive path. The commentary to the Satipatthana Sutta, however, gives 5 explanations of the phrase, of which only one suggests exclusivity. So it is a one-way path, or a path leading one way only. That means if you practice Satipatthana, it only leads you to Nibbana, not somewhere else. Here among dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating mind in mind, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. Now I look at his footnote now. What does he say concerning body in the body? The repetitive phrase, contemplating the body in the body, kaye kayanupasi, serves to determine the object, that is the body, by isolating it from other things such as feeling, mind, etc., and to show that one contemplates only the body as such, not as permanent, pleasurable, a self, or beautiful. Similarly, in regard to the other three establishments, or the three intense states of mindfulness, ardent, atapi, connotes energy, clearly comprehending, sampajano, implies wisdom. Covetousness and displeasure, abhijja, domanassa, are code words for the first two hindrances, and thus their removal may be understood to imply some success in concentration. Thus, altogether, 4 of the 5 spiritual faculties, indriya, are indicated here. And while faith is not mentioned, it is clearly a prerequisite for taking up the practice in the first place. So here, he translates as body in the body. But in other books, sometimes they translate as body as the body, etc. So the meaning here is you contemplate the body in the body, meaning only your attention is only fixed in the body or in feelings or in mind or in Dhamma and not somewhere else. For example, if your mind starts to run away, our mind is, our brain is a very special thing, very... So, I don't know how many gigs we have here. It's really good. So, sometimes when you are trying to, for example, you are practicing anapanasati, you are concentrating on your breath. Sometimes your mind can run away, And when your mind starts to think of other things, at the same time you are still watching your breath, right? So you are not watching your breath in the breath, you are watching the breath among your thoughts. Right? So here it says you are watching the body in the body and not somewhere else. This monks is the one-way path for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the passing away of pain and displeasure, for the achievement of the method, for the realization of Nibbana, that is, the 4 intense states of mindfulness. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement. So this is the first sutta. So here we have understood a few things about Satipatthana. Then another sutta, the second one. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali in Ambapali's grove. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, "Monks, Venerable Sir," the monks replied, the Blessed One said this, "Monks, a monk should dwell mindful and clearly comprehending. This is our instruction to you." This word mindful and clearly comprehending, the word mindful refers to sati. Clearly comprehending or clearly aware is sampajanya. So, in charana, the conduct of a monk or the practice of a monk, sati sampajanya is one of the things that you're supposed to practice. And this sutta explains what this refers to. And how monks, is a monk mindful, or how does he practice sati? Here monks, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma. Ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. It is in this way, monks, that a monk is mindful. And how monks does a monk exercise clear comprehension or sampajanya? Here monks, A monk is one who acts with clear comprehension when going forward and returning, when looking ahead and looking aside, when drawing in and extending the limbs, when wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, when eating, drinking, chewing his food and tasting, when defecating and urinating, when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, speaking and keeping silent. It is in such a way that a monk exercises clear comprehension. A monk should dwell mindful and clearly comprehending. This is our instruction to you. So here you can see the difference between sati and sampajanya. Sati is contemplating the four objects, only the four objects. But sampajanya is, you could say, like general mindfulness. Whatever you are doing, you have to know. It is necessary, but it is not a factor that brings you to enlightenment. So, when you practice sati, it is not, don't mistake it with practicing sampajanya. The third sutta. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then a certain monk approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said to him, Venerable Sir, it would be good if the Blessed One would teach me the Dhamma in brief, so that having heard the Dhamma from the Blessed One, I might dwell alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent and resolute. You see, the Buddha encouraged his monks to stay 5 years when they are new, after they have just taken the higher ordination. They're supposed to stay 5 years with a teacher and learn especially the suttas and the Vinaya from that teacher. And after 5 years, they are supposed to go off and practice. And the Buddha encouraged them to stay alone, to go off to a secluded place and stay alone. So this monk wanted to go off and stay alone. So he asked the Buddha to give him some instruction. Then the Buddha said, it is in just such a way that some foolish persons here make requests of me, but when the Dhamma has been spoken to them, they think only of following me around. And then he said, let the Blessed One teach me the Dhamma in brief. Let the Fortunate One teach me the Dhamma in brief. Perhaps I may understand the meaning of the Blessed One's statement. Perhaps I may become an heir to the Blessed One's statement. Then the Buddha said, well then, monk, purify the very starting point of wholesome states. And what is the starting point of wholesome states? Virtue that is well purified and view that is straight. Then, monk, when your virtue is well purified and your view straight, based upon virtue, established upon virtue, you should develop the 4 intense states of mindfulness in a threefold way. What for? Here, monks, dwell contemplating the body in the body, internally, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. Dwell contemplating the body in the body externally, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. Dwell contemplating the body in the body, internally and externally, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. Similarly, contemplate feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma. So, firstly here, what is important is what is the starting point of wholesome states? The Buddha said, virtue that is well purified and view that is straight. Then, monk, when your virtue is well purified and your view straight, based upon virtue, you should develop the 4 intense states of mindfulness in a threefold way. So here the Buddha is saying, before you practice Satipatthana, first you make sure your foundation is there. And what is that foundation? Sila and right view. If you don't have Sila and right view, you cannot succeed. So, Sila here refers to Aryan Sila, not to 5 precepts. Aryan Sila. Aryan Sila means the 3 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This right speech and right action will mean 7 precepts. 3 body precepts and 4 verbal precepts. And then right livelihood, that means you earn a livelihood without harming others. So you must have this sila, and then you must have right view. And right view is understanding the Four Noble Truths. And that you get from listening to the Dhamma or studying the books. So right view comes not from meditating, but from listening to the Dhamma. Because in the Majjhima Nikaya, I think Sutta 43, it is stated that there are two conditions for right view. The first one is the voice of another. The second one is thorough attention. The actual words is the voice of another. It's not listening to the Dhamma. It's the voice of another. That means another person teaches you the Dhamma. Then only you can get right view. You cannot get it yourself by meditating until doomsday. So that is why when a Samma Sambuddha appears in the world, he teaches the Dhamma and Aryans arise. Without the Samma Sambuddha teaching the Dhamma, cannot get Aryans arising. This is very important that we uphold our sila and listen to the Dhamma to get right view. Once you get right view, then you have entered the stream. And after you have entered the stream, then only you learn to meditate. So don't try to meditate before you get right view and practice your sila. A lot of people, they do the wrong things. They start from the back, the last factor of the Noble Eightfold Path practicing. In the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 117, the Buddha said, you want to practice the Noble Eightfold Path, you must start with right view. Right view will bring you to the second factor, right thoughts. And that will bring you to the third factor, right speech, etc. Okay, the fourth sutta. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Kosalans at the Brahmin village of Sala. There, the Blessed One addressed the monks thus: Monks, those monks who are newly ordained, not long gone forth, recently come to this Dhamma Vinaya, should be exhorted, settled and established by you in the development of the four intense states of mindfulness. What for? Come friends, dwell contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending, unified with limpid mind, concentrated with one pointed mind, in order to know the body as it really is. Dwell contemplating feelings and feelings, etc. So here you see, the Buddha is saying, when you practice Satipatthana with limpid mind, concentrated with one pointed mind, in order to know the body as it really is. So here it's important to note that you should have a concentrated mind. If you don't have a concentrated mind, you cannot see the body as it really is. And this can be seen from a few suttas. Later, I will show you another sutta where the Buddha says, if you practice Satipatthana correctly, it must lead you to samadhi, right concentration. Otherwise, you are not practicing it correctly. The fifth sutta, the Blessed One said, Monks, if one were to say of anything a heap of the unwholesome, it is about the five hindrances that one could rightly say this. For this is a complete heap of the unwholesome, that is, the five hindrances. What five? The hindrance of sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, doubt. This is a complete heap of the unwholesome, that is, the five hindrances. If monks, one were to say of anything a heap of the wholesome, it is about the four intense states of mindfulness that one could rightly say this. So here the Buddha says, the five hindrances is a heap of the unwholesome because it prevents us from seeing things as they really are. That's why in a few suttas, the Buddha said the condition for seeing things as they really are is the elimination of the five hindrances. And to eliminate the five hindrances, you have to attain samadhi. Because when you attain samadhi, then the five hindrances totally go away. You see this Majjhima Nikaya Sutta 68, the Buddha said, while he still does not attain to the delight and pleasure that are secluded from sensual pleasures and secluded from unwholesome states, meaning the first jhana, or to something more peaceful than that, meaning the higher jhanas. Then covetousness, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, doubt, discontent, weariness invade his mind and remains. While he attains to the delight and pleasure that are secluded from sensual pleasures and secluded from unwholesome states, or to something more peaceful than that means the jhanas. Then covetousness, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, doubt, discontent, weariness do not invade his mind and remain. So it is clear from this sutta that when you attain the jhanas, you get rid of the 5 hindrances. Whereas if you don't attain the jhanas, they are always there in your mind.